Has begun. It's the agenda. My very special guest is the Chelan County Sheriff, Brian Burnett. It's been a while since he's been here. It's good to see you, Sheriff.
Thanks, Michael.
You've had some exciting times that I'm just learning a little bit about. You worked with the U.S. Marshals to do a little cleanup action around our area.
Right.
Far and wide.
Multiple agencies in 3 different counties for the Pacific Northwest Violent Offender Task Force.
And how many violent offenders did you meet?
Well, they met quite a few over the course of 10 days, and obviously multiple jurisdictions here, and included a lot of agencies that potentially play a role in this, whether it's hands-on or information sharing, investigation. Obviously, it starts with the United States Marshals, U.S. Border Patrol, Homeland Security, Grant County Sheriff's Office, Douglas County Sheriff's Office, Chelan County Sheriff's Office, Moses Lake PD, Wenatchee PD, and East Wenatchee PD. So
wow.
A lot of different agencies over the course of the 10 days. And they were, skipping through and doing, a few days in each county.
That's a lot of coordination. Who's the boss?
U.S. Marshal is the lead on this. And so we work with them, with state, local, and federal resources to go in. And we're looking for, some of the most egregious offenders, fugitives from the law. And they made several arrests, not just for people that were wanted for warrants out of Washington State, but they actually located a couple individuals in, I believe, Arizona and Texas as well. And then we made a couple arrests for people that had warrants issued for them out of California and Idaho. So they did a great job.
Who puts together the intelligence so you know who everybody is and how to line them up and get them in order?
U.S. Marshals are looking. They're the ones that are looking for the criteria of the individuals they're actually looking for. And then they work with the local agencies for intel and information to see if they can actually locate these people, because a lot of their officers coming in from the marshal's office aren't familiar with the with the jurisdiction and the layout of the land, and so it's good to have both agencies and such coming together to work together.
You get some angry hombres out there to round up. That can be a dangerous work, right?
They're generally not very excited about going back to jail.
About seeing 60 guys in their front yard?
Right. And this was a much bigger. We've done these before, had a huge success on this one again, over 62 arrests. So that was a big piece. So, and I think we had close to 20 arrests here locally. So it was a great job by everyone.
I would imagine in the criminal world that kind of news gets around in a hurry, so that things get quiet for a while after a group of arrests like that.
Yeah, and I don't know
hope.
And I don't know the details. I know that they end up seizing 180 grams of methamphetamine, a couple $1,000s, and U.S. counterfeit currency as well.
So they're diversifying their criminal intent. They have counterfeit going, and then methamphetamine always seems to be part of it, because apparently these guys love methamphetamine. It keeps them up all night making counterfeit money.
Drugs, money, and guns are a big piece of it, yeah.
These guys give drugs a bad name. You realize that, right, there?
or drugs give us all a bad name.
Apparently. Counterfeit. Did you see any of the counterfeit money?
I did not.
I just wonder how good it was, because I personally have never encountered a counterfeit 20 or 100, so I don't know how easily it is to be fooled, but I imagine that with the type of paper and all the safety matters that are part of it, it's pretty hard to make a good counterfeit 20.
I would think that, it's one of those things that they put the bills together and try to make it more difficult with technology, but then, the criminals get a hold of technology as well and come up with ways to do it. But I would think overall, increasingly in the future, it would be more difficult for the average person to come up with counterfeit money that would be successful in passing the hands of most banks and such.
We're not far from the 4th of July. I know that's probably a crazy, terrible holiday for people in law enforcement and firemen, too, because you probably have to work. I don't know if you do or not. I hope you get the day off.
4th of July is a really big calls for service for all local agencies.
Everything under the sun, right?
Absolutely. And usually the warmer the weather, the more so. It's a little different than, I would say it's probably a little busier than Memorial Weekend, but it's a slightly different type of calls. Generally, we have more family-related type of atmosphere, so not bad, but still a lot of alcohol-related fireworks and different things like that. And more concerning that when you look out and you see how windy it's been.
God,
it's really windy as well today.
Yes, it is.
So, thankfully, we have a little cooler temperatures, but if that temperature range goes up, humidity comes down, and high winds, boy, it does not take much of a spark to get things going, and the fire can really carry. So obviously want people to exercise extreme caution when it comes to fire safety.
Because it's so easy to be a fool. I've done it myself. I know what it feels like to be a fool. You felt so innocent and in control until that bottle rocket went in the wrong place.
Right. So you shouldn't be doing that around here.
Shouldn't be doing that. No, sir. That was in a previous life of mine, Sheriff. But at the same time, we rely on the good offices of your deputies to make it safe when other people are not thinking about that. There's 10,000 people down to the Walla Walla. Are you going to be helping out with crowd control or mania control, whatever?
We bring down one of our vessels to do marine patrol security for that event in the Columbia River.
People get a little tanked up and then they get no water, right?
It's more just to show a force and to make sure that we have someone there to keep people in line, both that and in case something bad happens, we've got a rig in the water so we can actually respond at a much quicker timeline. That's
really a lot of I imagine, the pressure of your job. You have to respond, not just to some of the fireworks display on the 4th of July, but recently, just up on Mount Stewart, you guys had a hell of a response, and it was a very difficult. I mean, the fellow who fell off Mount Stewart was already dead probably by the time the call was made, and that's really not the point. The point is what it took to respond to that call. It took a lot of people and an awful lot of equipment.
Right, and I believe that his climbing partner was actually, from what I understand, was pretty fearful after he saw his friend have that fall. Knew that at minimum he had serious injuries, if not ultimately what it was a fatality. It was pretty fearful. I don't think either one of these climbers had much experience, and then so when our victim actually slid. They were doing more of what they call a mountaineering. So they're getting ready to cross like a glacier snowfield in pretty steep terrain. I don't believe that the victim had his crampons, which is more of an ice cleat that goes on top of your boot.
He didn't have those?
If they were using the ice axe, once he did slide, sounds like he only made a couple steps into that field and lost his footing and down sliding. And then eventually it's kind of over a steep area and down into the rocks. And it's an extreme situation with trauma that led to death, obviously. And then the call came in actually to Kittitas County. So the 911 call was routed over there. And then the information eventually comes back to Chelan County Sheriff's Office with the information knowing that we have a high elevation. This is 8,900 plus feet. And so we activated helicopter out of the Naval Air Base in Whidbey Island, and they actually brought a Black Hawk helicopter. Amazing crews with the Naval Force there. They've done night rescues for us before in the middle of a rainstorm.
They can just do it, right?
Their equipment and training, that's what they're there for, and it's in some ways it's a live training mission for them. They like to help. Normally, the military won't respond to a body recovery. At this point in time, we didn't know the victim's status. So, we have to get moving now and get that ship in the air so we can have that quick response. Unfortunately, it was a deceased and a bad situation there. But again, they were able to lift the deceased climber out of that area. But those are touchy situations for all of the emergency response people that whether it's the mountaineering club that works here with us, or our own staff, or even again our helicopter crew that come from sometimes local law enforcement agencies like Snohomish County. They assist us quite a bit. Again, this was military based, but great group of people that know what they're doing. But at the same time, there's a technical piece to that, and a lot of weather can make it even more difficult, depending on wind and then rain and different things like that. A lot of times it'll look great down here, and you can get up in that higher elevation around those mountain peaks, and the weather's completely different.
It's a different world at 9,000 feet, that's for sure. But I learned something from this story that I had no idea about after all the news stories I've covered in my life, and that is helicopters can't fly at 9,000 feet. They can't go up there and maneuver and do what they want. You needed that Black Hawk because it could work at that altitude.
Yeah. You lose power, temperature, higher temperatures and higher elevation. Those machines lose picking power, and so the bigger the machine, the better in these situations. And it's not just for the ability to hoist or long-lined, amount of weight out of a certain area, but it's also they have to have a certain amount of power for those helicopters to actually maneuver properly. You lose power, you lose your fatality.
You become a statistic,
And
too.
all of a sudden they can go down, and you can't have that. They got to be able to operate for the specific mission, so they got to know how far are they going, how much weight are they going. You know, that has a lot to do with their fuel load and everything, and as far as calculating out what their mission is going to be.
What else is on your list of events that have made it interesting, that stayed on your desk and made you think about it?
Well, stayed on my desk. I don't know. There's always things going on. Obviously, we had the fatality investigation up in Manson last week as well. We're doing pit training, which is our a part of our emergency vehicle operation course.
What's that? Oh, when you
pit
bump the
training,
car?
where we actually bumped the car. I actually was out there on the track and doing that to stay certified myself, along with my command staff earlier today.
See, I don't know anything about helicopters, but I'm from L.A., so pit maneuvers, we see that, twice a week on our high-speed chases.
Right.
Which is reality television.
It is, and this is to stay current with our policy and procedure, make sure that people are doing it properly, make sure that they're following the policy on, is it a proper location, speed, does the incident warrant for them to use that type of aggressive maneuver, but then also what are the surroundings, traffic, lighting, conditions, pedestrian traffic, all of that.
What could possibly go wrong with this?
And this is what law enforcement has to do.
Yeah.
Is you have individuals that have to make split-second decisions based on public safety and weigh all of the factors in one, sometimes just a few seconds.
Have you ever done it? The pit control
Not in a live situation as far as out on the street. We've had our staff that have done those and been successful in those. Other than the controlled situation or training, I've not yet had to do that. So.
It's the funniest thing. You'd think that it would be a design flaw, but all you have to do is bump the end of that car, and it does go out of control.
A lot of people will ask, Michael, well, you're an administrator, you're behind the desk, you're at meetings all the day long, so why would you bother doing the training yourself?
Duh.
For me, It keeps me in touch with what we are training and doing. It gives me up close time with our trainers. And I can go out and I can talk to our commissioners about it, and I can know that, hey, we are doing this, this, and this, and I'm confident in our training programs that we have. So all of our use of force programs, even when we brought in the LVNR, which is a laterovascular neck restraint, not to get confused with the chokehold, because chokehold actually does airway, but we're talking about the blood flow here, right? And so I actually went through all of that training last year at the same time, because I want to know and testify to all of those people around me, again, our commissioners, the budget, training, and stuff like that, what kind of level of training we're doing, and knowing that we're having an impact in a positive way to train up all of our staff in the best way to equip them to put things in their toolbox.
If you were monitoring a chase going on right now, high speed or low speed, would they have to ask your permission over the radio to do the pit maneuver? Would somebody in command discuss it with the driver of the closest car, or how would you?
Our current policy, I believe, states that you need to grant authority, permission from a supervisor. I know that our trainers were asking that they would like to make a modification, and so I know there's a request that's going to be coming up that they can do an automatic pit maneuver under circumstances at the lower speed, because we do low speed and high speed pit maneuvers. And so if it was under a specific speed, and so I suspect we're going to see a request come in, and there'll be some discussion on that. We'll probably have to do some research to see what agencies around the state and or the country are doing with that.
Of course, if someone is willing to run from the police in such an obvious way where they're really not going to get away, they're just maintaining their freedom for the next 30 seconds. Then when you do the pit maneuver, you still have to take them into custody, and that can be a hassle.
Right, and sometimes you spin them out and away they go. So, I mean, picking the right location, a safe location, and maintaining public safety. I mean, it's not just we're in defense tactics and law enforcement, it's way different than self-defense, because defense tactics says I've got to maintain my safety, public safety, and the safety of the suspect that I'm dealing with, and that's not an easy thing to do. And so you have to take all of those things, factor in, is this a safe place to do it, and pick the right time and move, or to say, no, this doesn't outweigh the chance of putting the rest of the public or myself and everybody at harm's way. So it's just like putting those things together to say, do I pull the trigger here or not, so to speak? No pun intended here, but
Gotcha.
This is what we got to do, and to bring a conclusion, a safe conclusion, where in self-defense, it's way different than a person off the street civilian, where you're being threatened by somebody and you're just trying to protect your life. That's way, way different So much higher standards in the way we deal with it. Obviously, as the force of continuum goes up, and you have somebody that has done something and assaulted you, or egregious bodily harm, or a threat to life, then obviously our use of force continuum moves up to a different level, and then we can activate different pieces to that. But there's all of these different things that we have to follow throughout that. And again, it's not like you have time to sit down and read the policy. These things happen split second, so you got to make a quick decision, and that's why we train within it and try to give people life like scenarios in our use of force training to make sure that when these things come out, it's more of a natural reaction than gee, I got to sit down and think about it, because by that time it's something's happened and moved on and it's too late.
The funny thing about those chases, they go high speed, they go low speed, and then the guy who's leading the chase runs out of places to go. He just runs out of ideas, and then you know where they always end up going? Home.
Yeah, those do happen. I had a high speed. Well, I had a pursuit failed a stop situation years ago when I was working out in the Leavenworth area. Ended up in a 45-minute pursuit, but the person never went. Most of the time was within the speed limit, or 5 or 10 miles an hour over. It had snowed the night before. They never got into a high speed, but it was in a situation we didn't have the pit maneuver back then and weren't trained for it. It would have been a great place to use application there. And after 45 minutes later, and we ended up in Lake Wenatchee, and State Patrol was able to get in position and spike strip this individual.
Oh, that's good.
And again, that car didn't stop until the tread was coming off, so they had no intention of stopping. And again, this was somebody that was under the influence of methamphetamine at the time.
Ah, great.
So it ended up with that
we've
person
come full
bailing
circle
out
in
of the
just
car.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, when you do that and there's damage to the car, is there damage to the squad car? Or do you have those things?
It really
in front?
depends. In that situation, we blocked the individual in because we were more fearful for what they were going to be doing if they got back in the car, and that person jumped out right at the last minute. And as I was opening up my door, that car was just a few feet away. Of course, they didn't put it in park, so now it's rolling towards my vehicle, right, and it bumped into the side. But I had a decision to make, because I'm not going to try to stay there and have it pin my leg in. So I had to leap up over the car as that person was running, into the woods and go in and
you got him.
And you get hands on.
Something
Actually,
tells me
it was a she at that time, but yeah, we got her.
Wow. Isn't that fascinating? I did. You said she, and I just said, no. Wait, it all started to add up.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, main thing is to maintain the safety for our highways of people traveling back and forth, because again, pit maneuvers are going to happen most likely on a public highway, and we got to just take all of those things in consideration.
We sort of went by
we
that.
Train for those.
That fatality in Manson. I didn't know that it had been solved. It was a hit and run. Was there enough evidence for you to figure out who did it? I guess so.
Actually, the following day, our detectives were able to make an arrest. The individual actually had ended up being the suspect and ran over the individual that we believe was passed out in the street due to alcohol intoxication.
Wow.
And so when that person actually came back and attempted aid, CPR, and then when emergency workers were there along with Chelan County Sheriff deputies, they interviewed the person. They never indicated that they were the one that had ran the individual over. They knew they were. Yeah. Regardless of what the reason was, is that person failed to give that information. And then later we were able to identify, and the front of the car did not show any damage, but the damage was done underneath the vehicle. And so they were able to locate and identify broken pieces of car parts from underneath the vehicle, identified them to a make and a model, and then went back and then kind of put two and two together the next day and said, well, this was an individual. Oh, this matches this person's car. Went back and actually did a search warrant and then an interview and put it all together.
Sleeping in the street. Or sleeping being an exaggeration of the term drunk in the street.
Right. There's concerns that we had alcohol involved for both persons involved. And it's a bad case scenario. And like I said, generally, we don't see a whole lot of good come from the calls that we respond to when there's alcohol involved.
No, alcohol is not your friend. I told my daughter that. She doesn't believe me yet. She will. What's the I know what I was going to mention to you. Harvey Jestall's retiring today, and he's having a party. And I was wondering, when I was thinking about that, because there's a lot of people running for that office now. In your estimation, how long does it take for a sheriff to know his job when a new man comes in? There's a lot to learn, right?
I would say there's a lot of factor there, Michael. One, I can only relate to what it was like for myself. And I felt like it was like drinking out of a fire hose for almost 2 years. And then I don't know that the volume ever slows down. You get a little more accustomed on how to consume it
Right.
and how to distribute it.
Right.
But a lot of it would be is that person from within the agency. How well do they know their inner workings? How well are they familiar with the budget, working with commissioners, and all of the inner pieces? For us, it was a lot bigger pieces of that is, where are you at in your contract negotiations with your deputies association? For us, we also have our city contracts, school resource contracts with the school districts. So there's a lot of pieces there. And so obviously you have candidates for Douglas County that has experience both inside and outside of that agency. It would be different for both persons. And what position did they hold? And what was their level of experience, up to that point? But either way, I don't think that anybody that hasn't been in those shoes can really know exactly what it's like. There's a different level of pressure that comes along with that position that I don't believe that anybody would really know until they actually experience it. And I can remember when I was running, one of our deputies and his dad had been involved running for sheriff years ago, and he just told me, he says, hey, for your kids' sake, maintain a balance and don't forget, your family first. And I thought that was a great statement coming from them because it can be difficult even when you know those things. There's a lot of demand on you and personally inside your agency, externally, the community wanting you to come here, do this, a lot of different things, as you are the sheriff, and they like to have you respond and partake. And so it's just trying to find the balance and how that works, putting all the puzzle pieces together. And
also, I guess, learning the ropes to the point where the pressure is not crushing, so that you don't have to drink all day from that fire hose.
Oh, the stress can kill a person. Yeah. And I've had to learn how to balance that in my own life and manage that. And thankfully, I have a wife that has a pretty good sense and feel for when maybe I'm getting a little imbalanced and I need to rein things back in. And
he says, hold on, Sheriff. I want you to listen to my orders, right?
Yeah. It's important. It really is, because it's a full, as far as, when they teach things like at a national academy level, which is executive level leadership for law enforcement, it's physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
Good luck.
And all of those three. It is important because they tell you need to first learn how to lead yourself and stay balanced and healthy, because if you don't, how are you expected to lead everybody else? And to pass that philosophy in to your own staff to say, we want you guys to be healthy all the way around, is one of the most important things that we could ever talk about.
It's good your wife has that position in this world, because there's probably not many people at work who are willing to say, you tell him. No,
and I wish I could be have always claimed to have been successful at that, and I haven't been, but that's where we learn. Yeah. And some people learn the hard way. Unfortunately, I learned the good way to say, okay, I finally came around and I'm doing a better job balancing it. But there's times where you have to have things in place to remind you, whether it's physical exercise, get away, you got to be able to, especially electronic wise, we carry emails and phone calls everywhere we go. There's times where you have to shut that down and decompress. And so, for Sheriff Jesdahl to put in 33 years of law enforcement service, just in itself of being a public servant in that, regardless of your position and status, is a lot of stress that can come, PTSD in a sense, and all the different types of calls and investigations that you've done. And then you add that different layer of stress when it comes to the internal process of dealing with personnel issues and all of those other things, and the stress at that level. It's important. So my hat's off to him. I wish him the best. I'm going to show up there late this afternoon. I'm going to be a little late because I got a 4:00 appointment. But there's going to be several of us over there to wish Harvey Jesdahl a great new chapter, and to know that, what, just because you're walking out here, we're still here for you if you need us as your support.
You may not think that sheriff's funny, but I found out. I said, I don't know what I'm going to call you now. You're not going to be sheriff. He said, you can call me Harv. I said, all right, Harv. And he said, no, not yet.
That's good.
That was good. He set me up beautifully, and I fell for it.
But believe it or not, on the state level, the sheriffs really care about one another. We see that with the WASPIC organization. We see that in the Sheriff's Association, all 39 sheriffs. We don't always agree with one another, but we do have each other's best interests in mind, and I think that's important. And that's that peer-to-peer thing to know that you've got that layer that you can go to talk about on things that maybe some people just don't understand the things that you're going through. And so, again,
here's something that people are not agreeing on. There are currently apparently some immigrants that illegally cross the border that are being held in Washington State for crossing the border in Texas. I think they're in Tacoma, and I just wonder if there's any that are closer to us that we don't know about.
So they've actually been shipped up from Texas to Washington.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I want to try to go there and try to figure that one out. It would be good to have someone explain
all over
that
the country
to us on why we would ship people that far across to be held. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I know because I certainly don't.
I just didn't.
It sounds expensive.
It sounds very expensive.
I mean, just when you look at budgetary wise, it sounds expensive, regardless of the age of that. I know there's been a lot of controversy on separating children from their parents, and I would say, again, we want to stay away from that as much as possible, the traumatizing of that. A lot of times the kids are just there because their parents are moving, and
I know.
And they don't have a say in it. They're going to follow their family. What's he going to do? So it's not an easy topic. I don't care how how do we, but there is a port of this is if we have to maintain our borders. We do. And then try to be humane about it in the process. So I think that's important. At the same time, you don't just open up the borders because we could have some serious repercussions from that.
I think the complaint was this doesn't seem like us. This doesn't seem like something we would do. That was the controversy that I think that's raised a lot of unanswered questions in the minds of not Democrats or Republicans, parents who can't help but view that story in terms of what would happen to them if their child was taken away.
I just traveled with a group from here from Wenatchee, a large group to Honduras. Just got back last Saturday, and one of the first times I've been out of the country in a long time. But you don't just do whatever you want to do. You follow customs directions on both ends, whether you're entering a foreign country or when you're coming back. And we do it the right way and the legal way, and we want to see everybody do that way. I just a couple nights ago was participated in the naturalization ceremony when we had 109 people from multiple countries.
I've been to those.
Get their citizenship.
Those are great nights.
Those people did it the right way.
Yeah, it's hard.
Hats off to it is hard.
Yeah, it is hard.
And so, it's a difficult situation, Michael, and topic, and I don't think there's an easy answer. And there's some things that we're going to have to say. We know the important things. We draw the line in the sand. And there's other things we need to say, is this best practice or is there different ways we can do it to do it better, again, and remain humane at best.
Well, we talked for 40 minutes. I didn't realize we were there. I got to talk to a guy who had 2 grand slams last night. Do you mind if we wrap it up?
I think you better go. It sounds like a hit.
We better do it. But tell me in 30 seconds what you learned about Honduras.
Honduras, it's hot and humid.
Beautiful?
Very beautiful. We did a service project down there. The people were amazing. And the women that fed our group of 43.